Long ago, there was a wandering doctor known as Shanhaizi, Mountain Sea Master. He carried an old book, its cover made of bronze plates with strange beast patterns carved on it. This doctor was unusual. He didn't heal humans, but treated the beasts of the mountains and seas. His core belief was that human illness often stemmed from the heart, while beast ailments were caused by their nature. If the root of the problem was identified and treated, it would be in accordance with the natural order. This year, the mountains and seas were unusually turbulent. On Mount Qiongqi, there lived a nine-tailed fox named Ajiu. Her fur was as white as snow, and her 9 tails were beautiful when they swished. However, her cry sounded like a baby wailing. Ajiu was an ancient beast recorded in the Classic of Mountains and Seas, capable of eating people and dispelling poisons. People feared her, thinking she brought disaster. But Ajiu was troubled. She kept having the same dream where her tails would break off one by one, turning into flames that disappeared without a trace. At dusk, Ajiu found Shanhaizi. She transformed into a girl in a white dress with 9 faint tails behind her. Softly, she asked for his help, saying that her tails itched terribly as if they were about to burn and hoped he could cure her. Shanhaizi opened the bronze book. The first page showed a picture of the 9-tailed fox with the note, "Cry like a baby." He smiled and told Ajiu that her problem wasn't inherent but was caused by the Four Fiends. He decided to take her to meet these creatures to find a cure. Their first stop was Mount Shanhaizi, home of one of the Four Fiends, Bifang, a one-legged bird resembling a crane with a red beak and white markings. Bifang was a fire spirit, and wherever it appeared, strange fires would ravage the land. At the moment, it sat on a dead tree branch, muttering in frustration, as if even it didn't understand why it kept setting fires. Ajiu was angry, believing Bifang was the one who had set fire to Qiongqi's plants, making her tails itch. However, Bifang was full of regret, explaining that the wildfires were not intentional but a result of human greed and deforestation. It had been blamed for these fires for ages, leaving it confused and empty. Shanhaizi recognized that Bifang's issue was fire without roots, and handed it a bamboo stick, suggesting it plant a firethorn forest at the foot of Qiongqi Mountain. Once the forest grew, the fire would have a place to belong and stop spreading. Bifang hesitated, then followed them to plant the firethorn. The second stop was the West Mountain, home to the fiend Qiongqi, an animal resembling a tiger with wings, covered in quills. It was one of the Four Fiends and fed on the loyal, punishing the good. At the moment, Qiongqi was licking its claws at the entrance of a cave, its eyes sly but tinged with sadness. Ajiu, knowing Qiongqi's reputation, was terrified and hid behind Shanhaizi. But Qiongqi admitted that it had eaten too many false saints and was now lost, having lost its original nature over time. It feared that, without evil to punish, it had lost itself. Shanhaizi diagnosed Qiongqi with confusion of good and evil and suggested it accompany Ajiu to a market, helping distinguish true goodness from false kindness. This would also help Ajiu relieve the poison in her tails. Qiongqi reluctantly agreed, and at the market, it saw both the good and the fraudulent. Though furious, it learned from Ajiu to protect the good and not punish the evil. That night, Qiongqi saved Ajiu from a hunter and finally realized that protecting kindness was more meaningful than punishing evil. The third stop was the most dangerous, their search for Taotie. Taotie was the leader of the Four Fiends, having only a head and a huge mouth. It was known for its insatiable hunger, once even consuming its own body. It lived in a deep mountain gorge, surrounded by treasure and leftover food, devouring anything in sight. Ajiu was afraid that Taotie's endless consumption would eventually devour the world. But Taotie confessed that, despite eating everything, it could never fill the emptiness inside. It had realized that it longed for contentment. Shanhaizi sighed and opened the last page of the bronze book. There, the Four Fiends and Ajiu were depicted together. He told Taotie that its ailment was bottomless desire, and Ajiu's 9 tails could transform into 9 kinds of light. If Taotie spit out half the treasures it had consumed, Ajiu could weave a contentment cloak to help it understand the meaning of fulfillment. Taotie hesitated for 3 days and nights, but finally spat out half of its treasures. Ajiu wove the cloak, and when Taotie wore it, it was stunned, its eyes filled with tears. For the first time, it understood that true satisfaction came from knowing when enough was enough. Later, Bifang, Qiongqi, Taotie, and the fourth fiend, who had been secretly watching, gathered on the peak of Qingqiu. Shanhaizi closed the bronze book and pointed out their values. In the book, they were once feared or revered beasts, but through the changes of the human heart, they had become mirrors of human nature. Bifang taught that fire should have roots and not burn recklessly. Qiongqi taught that protecting the good was better than punishing the evil. Taotie taught that knowing contentment is the true fulfillment. And Ajiu, though capable of eating people, understood the poison of the human heart. Ajiu's tails finally stopped itching, and she returned to her true form, her 9 tails sweeping the sky, creating a rainbow. Bifang sang a strange song in the firethorn forest. Qiongqi watched over the children playing on the mountain, and Taotie lay in the valley, finally resting peacefully. Shanhaizi continued his journey, leaving behind a proverb. All monsters are not monsters. It is the human heart that reflects them. Healing these beasts is, in essence, healing humanity itself. From then on, the beasts of the mountains and seas were no longer feared, but became warm and powerful stories in the pages of Shanhaizi's bronze book.